yeah, we've made a few changes over the last few weeks to the way in which the team works and kind of priorities and stuff moving forward. So we're really excited to kind of run through that with you all this evening. But yeah, I hope everyone is well, and obviously kind of lockdown 2 is upon us, and we'll obviously, today we're not going to focus on COVID. You'll be pleased to know we'll get a night off from hearing from me about COVID and ready to return. But we will obviously keep people updated as the next couple of weeks goes on, and we're able to share what it looks like post kind of lockdown and second kind of 3rd of December. So obviously we'll kind of structure of the session. We'll present some information about the new structures and ways of working, and kind of our work we'll be looking to do over the coming years in the development team. And then, but we want to focus a lot of time on question and answers as well. So thank you to everyone for sending that information, those questions in already. And as we go, do post those questions in the chat box, and we will look to answer those as we continue. So I'm just going to share our screen. So if you bear with me 2 seconds. Okay, so before I officially start, I should probably also introduce myself and our colleagues that are with us this evening. So my name's Greg. I'm the Head of Development and Volunteering at Table Tennis England. And with me, we also have Jenny Leach, who's our National Participation Manager, and Claire Rockwell, who is our Clubs, Schools and League Manager. So I'm going to start off this evening, but then I'm going to hand over to Jenny and Claire to do the bulk of the presentation. Just for info, we are recording this session, so if you don't want to be on the screen, switch your videos off. But if we can also ask everyone to put their cameras on mute as well, please, just so we don't get any interference. I'll just wait for that background noise to stop before I start. Okay, seems to be sorted, so we'll go. So yeah, as I said, this evening we'll look through the new structure, kind of the opportunities for growth moving forwards and priorities, and then the Q&A as well. One thing that you will notice tonight, we haven't focused on the coaching and officiating angles, which is part of our kind of development department's work. The reason being, we feel that's, it's a big chunky piece of work in itself, and so we wouldn't do either kind of the participation clubs work justice or the coaching work justice if we tried to put it all in one place this evening and talk about everything. So we're going to run another webinar on coaching and officiating on the likely to be January the 20th is the date for the diary, but we'll obviously communicate that nearer the time. So the development team structure. So what we previously, I guess, have moved from is a very regional kind of based team. We had a number of regional staff, and I guess that's been the case for many number of years, where we've had up to 10, 11 regional staff and operating out in the field and visiting clubs. So the visiting clubs and talking to clubs will remain, but the way in which I guess the team's structured is now changed slightly. So the focus is now very much around those teams having a bit of a clearer role in how they operate, and allow us to place a greater focus on the development and expansion of participation programs. So TT Kids is an example of that, and I guess we started to move towards that way of working, but we are keen to do more of program-based work and providing programs, high quality programs to clubs and leagues and coaches to be able to deliver and increase participation and improve the experience across the sport. And from a club perspective, and enabling us to provide a more focused support for clubs directly, and a team that's solely dedicated to club development and facility development, supporting with funding applications and providing the club webinars and the club conferences that we've been obviously running through COVID and the regional conferences before kind of lockdown and COVID came upon us. So ultimately, we've tried to position a team where we feel we can have the biggest impact and then add the biggest value to the sport and to the grassroots of the game. We've tried to think about how the sporting landscape and I guess the general kind of the world is ever-changing place, and consumers and participants are a lot more focused on the experience and experience they get, and going out for meals or going out to experience different things. The world has probably changed slightly in the expectations of parents and families and young people, and therefore we want to make sure that we move with that change. There's more competition than ever for space for people, whether that's young people or adults. We need to make sure we can, I guess, find ways to stand out from the crowd, and one of the ways we believe we can do that is through development of programs like TT Kids, and you'll hear a bit more about later about the programs we already have for adult participation, but also the work we hope to do going forwards. And it's very much, the team is very much geared towards the core of the sport. It's about clubs, it's about volunteers, it's about the leagues and coaches, and how we grow the game within that kind of core of the sport. So it's the other area kind of worth mentioning. We've tried to align a new structure to the strategy. So you'll be aware of Mission 2025 that the board continue to work on, and will be adapted and looked at obviously post kind of COVID, and how we can use the sport to grow participation again. And the 4 Ps you'll hear about in a second very much kind of aligned to those 4 Ps in Mission 2025 around places, participation, people and performance. So we've moved, as I mentioned, we've moved away from that regional segregation and that geographical segregation. We've de-emphasised kind of the location of how we support clubs. So we don't have someone just working with clubs in the East Midlands or someone just working with clubs in the Southwest. And it's more focused now on where we feel we can add the greatest value to those clubs. So we have a team of club support officers now that will provide specific advice and have more expertise in whether it's facilities or the Club Spark program. And of course, we will still direct people to the participation team, which you'll hear about in a second, if they want a particular focus around youth participation or adult participation. So the new structure essentially kind of allows more consistent support for clubs. It doesn't mean if you're based 3 hours away from any member of staff that you're more or less likely to get support. And we will still want to visit clubs and go out to clubs, but we also have learned from this past 6 to 8 months that there are different ways of working, and we can have really productive, worthwhile meetings and catch-ups over Zoom and be able to develop those relationships. Some of you we were seeing twice a week at the height of lockdown on a coach webinar and a club webinar, and you know, that was fantastic to be able to do that, and we probably had more communication with many of you than we've ever had in the past 5 to 10 years. So we can take learnings from that and help move that forward. So this is the new structure, and previously, as I mentioned, we had a regional based support team, and Claire operated as our kind of clubs manager in essence. She also looked after schools and leagues, but there wasn't much support in specific club work in that team, because the regional staff had to, I guess, know about everything. Whereas the new way of working is not necessarily where the area staff have to know about everything. It's about trying to provide that kind of expertise and for the club support office to be real experts in that field, for the youth team to be real experts in youth participation. So we provide more dedicated support. So the coaching and education team doesn't change much, but we do welcome Craig Bryan into the coaching and education officer role. We started a couple of weeks ago. And the club support officer team is Martin Ireland, who many of you will know, Jonathan Driscoll, who's been with us supporting our programme development over the last 12 months, and Andrea Holt, who again many of you will know. And the schools officer, Keegan, continues in that role, and Sharon, who many of you will heard from this evening, continues as an administrator. So in the participation team, which is our shift and focus to be more driven by improving the experience and increasing participation, we now have an adult participation lead, which is Chris Newton, and a support officer for adult participation officer in Jack Grundy, and a program lead and youth participation officer in that. So that both those roles are focused around youth participation. But this map is to demonstrate, I guess, that even though it's a centralization of functions, I guess, in terms of how we operate and how we support, it doesn't mean that we can't get out and visit clubs, and any one of our team will be able to do that across the whole department. So this is just where our team are based. We're not all kind of sitting in Milton Keynes office. We have staff based across the whole country. So we still see ourselves being able to get out and support and meet clubs when it's necessary and it's the right thing to do in terms of time-wise. So people right from Blackpool, where Martin Ireland lives, and right down to kind of North Devon, where Craig Bryan is. So our priorities in the last 3 years, and probably also worth pointing out, we're not going to focus too much on what programs are about or what TT Kids is and so on. We know you're probably aware of that, and we will direct you to various webinars that have been held previously about all of these different programs if you want to know more. We want to focus tonight on kind of the future and the work that's ongoing and how hopefully you can get involved in that. So our priorities in the last 3 years have been around increasing under 11 participation, raising the profile and increasing participation for women and girls, and supporting the improvement of the experience and retention for members. And we'll come on to kind of what our priorities are moving forwards at the end, but Jenny and Claire will probably be touching on those as we work through. So I'm going to hand over to Claire at this point, and she's going to talk a bit about the places work and the clubs, leagues and schools team.
Cool. Thanks, Greg. Good evening, everyone. Great to see so many people on the call today, some familiar faces and some that I don't recognise too. So the clubs, leagues and schools team is all about driving the development of a thriving and sustainable clubs, schools and leagues network that's safe, well managed and accessible to all. So the new structure that Greg has obviously just gone through brings about changes both in terms of personnel and in ways of working, but it also really gives us an opportunity to build on some of the work that has been going on over the last couple of years and take that forward over the next few, as well as to start to progress in some new areas and build on new opportunities too. So Greg's already gone through the team, but just to re-emphasise, alongside myself, there's the 3 club support officers in Martin, Jonathan and Andrea, and Keegan, schools officer, and Sharon as our clubs and schools administrator. So whilst everyone will have their own areas and their own individual work areas and roles, there are several themes that thread through the team's work as a whole. So raising the profile, that's both in terms of raising the profile of Table Tennis England's offer of support to clubs, leagues and schools, getting the word out there on those, but also supporting clubs, leagues and schools to raise the profile of their own offer as well. Providing a meaningful and evolving offer of club and league support that's insight driven, that's based on club and league ambitions and also on the Table Tennis England objectives as well. We'll be looking to drive the development of table tennis in schools, and that covers opportunities to provide opportunities to play, opportunities to compete and also opportunities to volunteer as well. We're also looking to reduce the administrative burden that is often attached to providing regular playing opportunities and support facility development and access. So all of the work within the clubs, leagues and schools team, all the projects will link back to at least one of these key delivery themes. Thanks, Greg. Cool, thank you. In terms of changes in ways of working, I guess the most obvious really and the biggest change is the introduction of the club support officers. So the club support officers will have, or they will now have, a national remit, but will also have a significant focus on individual club support. So all Premier clubs will have a point of contact, so someone that you can reach out to if you've got questions, if you've got queries, or if you just needed support generally. We're really keen to focus on enhancing the Premier Club network. We know there's loads of great stories that go on, lots of great work that goes on, and some of the nominations and things that we've received through the Pride Table Tennis Awards recently are just some really great examples of that. But we're really keen to bring clubs together to share those successes, to share knowledge, and also to discuss some of the challenges and potential solutions to those as well. I think it's fair to say that the last few months have probably, Greg's already touched on it, but brought about new ways of engaging with clubs and leagues generally. So we'll be continuing to utilise online platforms. And we're also looking to improve those links between our clubs and our schools work, so that we can join the dots between the clubs and the schools that are really keen to grow the game for young people across the country. I mentioned as well that there's opportunities to build on some of the existing work, projects that are ongoing and have been in place for the past couple of years. The first one to mention, I think, is club affiliation. So since 2017, we've seen a 57% increase in the number of affiliated clubs, directly affiliated as either a Premier club or an associate club. Ahead of the 2018-19 season, we did complete a review of club membership, and there was two main outcomes to that. So what was then free club was, oh, can you still hear me okay? Because I've just flashed up saying my internet connection's unstable.
You went for a second, but you're back.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we reviewed the club membership offer. The two main outcomes was what was then free club was rebranded to associate club, and that meant that we could position that as a way for smaller clubs or clubs that are perhaps not quite ready to become Premier clubs, but are really keen to keep engaged with Table Tennis England as a way of doing that. We also, at that point, the Premier Club fee was increased, which enabled us to review the benefits that are on offer and provide we'll repackage it really and provide hopefully what was a more meaningful benefits offer. Obviously there's plenty more to do there, both in terms of growing our understanding of existing affiliated clubs and working with Premier clubs to make sure that the support that we offer is aligned to the need. But we also have over 2,000 club records on our Table Tennis England database, so it feels like there's an opportunity to further enhance our club support by reaching out to a wider audience too. Club engagement on there, that figure, that 220, is the number of coaches and volunteers that have accessed support through the conferences since 2017. Alongside conferences, whether that was regional conferences or the national conference that we did last year, we have also delivered a small number of workshops in partnership with Club Matters. Have also mentioned obviously that lockdown has enabled us, I guess, to reach more people by delivering online sessions. So I think since March we've delivered about 20 clubs and leagues webinars. That's generated around, well, it's over 600 people, and as a follow-up there's been almost 2,500 views of those videos on YouTube. So what that means in terms of going forward is, of course, you know, providing club and league engagement opportunities is still a massive priority, and alongside those traditional face-to-face things that we would have done in terms of conferences and workshops, there will now also be a virtual element to that, meaning that we can increase the regularity of those engagement events. We'll of course continue as well to work with partners to bring in expertise on specific topics where we need to, and yeah, see people like Club Matters on club structures and things like that is where we'll continue to work. When it comes to raising the profile, there have been some really positive steps in this over the last couple of years. So we've got 378 clubs that appear on the Table Tennis Finder on the Table Tennis England website, but this one really is on there to say that providing support for clubs and leagues to develop their own online presence is something that we're really keen to do and an area that we're keen to build on. Some of you, and many of you I'm sure, will recognise the Club Spark logo on there. So we've got 83 clubs Premier clubs currently registered with Club Spark, the club management tool, along with a number of associate clubs and leagues as well. We've had some really positive feedback. Really positive feedback on the Club Spark platform, and its usage has no doubt been accelerated by coronavirus and clubs and leagues needing to get a booking system in place. The platform ultimately was put in place to reduce the administration attached to day-to-day running of club activity. Club Spark doesn't come without its challenges, and I think it's only right to mention those, and that's both in terms of the support that we as Table Tennis England are able to provide clubs that are using the platform, but also when we're working with sport labs and getting those issues fixed as quickly as we can. So we are working and we are looking to improve both of those elements. We have sort of reviewed and refined our processes across a number of areas really in the recent years, and that's something that we will continue to do, because not only to improve our own internal efficiency, but it also improves the offer of support that we're able to offer able to provide to clubs and leagues and schools. And then the final one there is the schools membership. So we launched 2 new schools membership in September. So we've got the Schools Essentials and the Schools Plus, and those memberships enable schools to connect with Table Tennis England, but also create a pathway and an opportunity for Table Tennis England to connect directly with those schools as well. Ultimately, the schools membership will bring together the wider Table Tennis England schools work. So things like our schools equipment packages, the competitions, TT Kids for Schools, bringing it all together with the intention of enabling more schools to provide high quality table tennis opportunities across the country. Obviously, I think in the immediate priority, it sort of can't really miss it that the immediate priority is supporting clubs and leagues and schools as they recover, hopefully coming out the other side of the pandemic. So I'll hand over to Jenny, who I think is going to go through the participation team.
Real. Thanks, Claire. Hi, everyone. For those who haven't met me yet, I'm off mute, just checking. I'm Jenny Leach and will be the participation manager. So this team will be leading on the management and development of programs and products that will be aiming to improve experience in the sport of existing and new members. There is an adult focus to the team as well as a junior focus to the team, and both teams will have a specific area to oversee, but also are building what the junior and adult participation pathway look like, and this is to kind of identify key areas of opportunity, kind of drop-off areas, but also areas where we really think we can support our clubs and leagues to deliver to their audience. Our current programs and products and ones that we plan to develop, we believe can really add value to our clubs and leagues offer, and really improve the participants' experience in the sport, as I said, for existing members and new members. So the adult team, as Greg said, is led by Chris, and the adult officer is Jack. And the key focus will be focusing on leagues and also adult social programs. And then the junior team will be the programs will be Colette, focusing on TT Kids, and Lauren Evans, the youth participation officer. So the team will continue to drive the TT Kids program with a kind of focus for now on the TT Kids for School program, as well as managing and developing junior programs such as satellite clubs. Next slide, thank you. As Greg said at the start, each of the kind of programs are going to kind of go through, each have like a webinar on them already. So I'll give you a brief intro, but I do really urge you, if you're interested in the program, go look back in the webinar we did during lockdown, because there's lots more detail there, including case studies and kind of more facts and stats about the program. So hopefully, as you all know, TT Kids program was launched in 2019 as a new program for clubs to deliver to engage under 11s in sport in a fun, engaging, inspiring way. The first year of the program was a great success. I can see the key stats are on the slide now. A key part of TT Kids was that when you signed up and delivered the program, you bought into the brand, which is focused on the experience of the participant. In the first year, we've had 750 children experience table tennis for the first time through TT Kids, and over 50% of those bookings came through Facebook ads, which were a different way for us to promote our programs, which clear branding and marketing resources enabled us to do. Another aspect is that the same program is being delivered nationally, and each club is part of a wider aim of getting under 11s into table tennis. We know that the TT Kids participants are receiving the same sessions each week, but also being in the same kit, making them feel part of a wider initiative. On the Teach Kids live sessions during lockdown, the children were all in the same kit, showing that they were all part of one program aiming to do the same thing. If we are aiming to develop some of the programs and products that have been researched and developed for key audiences with suitable brand and marketing, focusing on a positive experience sport, hoping to engage these new audiences and also keep them in the sport, but also for our existing members, be able to give them a really positive experience. So to build on our TT Kids Clubs program, which was our kind of our phase one, we've expanded the program this year. Majority we have done focused on during lockdown and broaden the program to new audiences. So the TT Kids for Schools program was piloted and has now launched, provides kits and resources and training for schools as well as teachers. Again, using the branding, which you can see kind of all on the pictures there. On the kit and resources, it's clear for both participants and deliverers what program they're involved with and keeping that fun, engaging, inspiring aspect throughout it. The TT Kids Awards launched in October and is a new scheme to engage junior players in table tennis. The award scheme, which is on the top of the screen, has been designed to provide challenges and activities to keep young players engaged in the game. And this is flexible, so it can be done in a club session or also at home, realising that not everywhere will have a TT Kids session or a junior session suited for everyone. The scheme has 5 stages, with each stage getting harder. After completing stage 5, the idea is that behind that you'd then be ready, if you so wished, for the Bronze Performance Award, which would then help you test your skills in relation to measures to be that elite player. The TT Kids programme, with the branding and marketing resource we have with it, will continue to grow. We'll continue our phase programme for clubs, with phase 3 sign-ups launching soon. And there'll be more details about that hopefully this week or next week, as well as delivering the school package. We also will continue to build the programme, building on kind of the audience that we've already built through our kind of advertising and marketing, but also to new audiences through leisure centres and charities and more community partners as well. So moving on to more the adult side of the team. So the programmes we have here, Bat and Chat and Back to GT, these are our social programmes aimed at a more flexible approach at the sport, rather than potentially your typical club structure or league sessions. Bat and Chat is aimed at an audience who is looking at a slow pace of the game. And we're currently reviewing the programme and how we can make it more accessible for existing members. So making it more accessible for those clubs and leagues sent to the programme, as well as new audiences, including those hard to reach groups, as well as looking to build new partnerships through our opinion and community work, but also through our core market to widen our audience so more people can benefit from these programmes. The Back to TT programme, which you can see the logo on the bottom right of the screen, was launched in February. So unfortunately, although we had quite a few sign-ups for the programme, we've had no delivery yet. This programme was originally aimed at people returning to the sport, looking to potentially give it back into a club or league environment as a bit of a refresher, kind of on those key skills they need to play the game. However, with everything that's happening with the pandemic, it also is quite an appropriate programme that a club or league or even community could use as a tool to introduce players back into sport after having the long break after lockdown or also being in the tier systems. Both these programs have clear branding and marketing materials that are available and can be used, and also can help kind of access the existing members, but also those new audiences, table tennis. As part of the adult participation work, a key focus for us will be look at a league product development. As the adult team, we'll be building on their existing knowledge of leagues and digging deeper into our insight data to help best support leagues going forward. One area which we funded through BTT, which hopefully some of you will know is a funding programme, was funding short format leagues and summer leagues. This had some success in engaging members and also some new players, but on quite a small scale, and kind of some individual projects that kind of worked isolated and didn't create long-term behaviour change. It was also quite hard for us to manage memberships and provide those support those involved, but we did see some really good work there. So as part of the adult team focus, we'll be researching and developing a branded product that will support leagues to move to delivering an alternate flexible format. This flexibility will enable people to fit table tennis into their lives easier and also engaging with different audiences who are potentially put off by that traditional format. We'll be looking to build a brand similar to TT Kids and Bat and Chats so that leagues will have the support and help to build the right experience and also appeal to a new market of players that will be able to bring new teams into the sport. The programme will include clear branding guidelines such as, so for TT Kids, you know the programme, when you're signing up to be fun, inspiring, engaging, but also we'll make sure there's marketing there that we can use on social medias and websites to really get the product out there as well. And I'll hand over back to Greg.
Thank you, Claire and Jenny. It would be remiss of us not to probably in talking about the future and talking about the upcoming months and years, not to mention the impact of COVID-19 and the response, I guess, for us as a governing body, but also in terms of your club and league work. And we recognise that there may be a loss in membership. In some cases, people are seeing people not as confident at coming back. So I guess a lot of the work we are doing around the programs and product development and club support in terms of funding is about trying to help provide those products quickly that you can use to engage people back. So if you have seen a drop of 25% in adult members, you know, how can we use back to table tennis and bat and chat to try and increase those numbers back up quickly? So we're trying to make sure those programs are there ready to help clubs use them to re-engage, either re-engage people back into the sport or look at new audiences to bring in. And the funding support is there. Would really encourage you to apply for the Sport England funding that is available. I know a couple of clubs on this call have already received a response of their funding, a really quick turnaround and a reasonably simple process in terms of the usual Sport England funding application. So really encourage you to look out those Sport England pots, get your bids in. They're getting back to people really quickly, but as last time, they had to shut it because of the number of applications coming in. So really encourage you to do that now, probably, and speak to the Claire and the club support team to help shape that, and don't wait on it 3-4 weeks to see the impact after lockdown, because it might have shut by then if they get high numbers. There are some other funding pots out there, and we'll of course share those, but ones to look out for are community foundations. There's also a pot of funding opened up from UK Youth, specifically around young people work, and it's worth having a look at that. There's larger pots of funding available, but particularly for those that do a lot of work with young people, not just in their club, but outreach work. That one's worth a look at, and that's specifically around COVID and coronavirus response as well. So touched on priorities moving forward. So you'll have heard Claire and Jenny talk about most of these things just now, but I'll just quickly run through these and then we're going to open up for Q&A. So empowering clubs to grow, sustain and achieve their ambitions. I think over the past 2 or 3 years, and one of the reasons with Premier Club, I guess, there's less specifics that you have to do is because we want to support clubs to grow to what they want to do and to achieve their own ambitions. Some people want to focus on beginners and reaching as many people as they can. Some people want to focus on performance, and that's absolutely fine, and that we want to support however clubs want to grow. So that flexible offer to be able to do that, supporting the development of a positive participant experience in local leagues is what Jenny just alluded to. Engaging individuals in the sport from underrepresented groups, with a focus still on women and girls in that area. We know, there's 10% membership in females still across the sport. It's an area we want to grow that female participation, but also thinking about those other underrepresented groups across the sport. And youth participation is a clear focus for us. It's slightly broadened out from our under 11 participation focus recently, because obviously those TT Kids participants over the last 12 to 18 months are now getting older, and we don't want to forget about those and their ongoing pathway as a junior player. So now we're going to open out to Q&A. So thank you for those again that did send those questions in beforehand. So we're going to go through those first, and I've noticed quite a few questions coming in the chat box as well. So we will pick up those in a second. For some people that sent those questions in, that they have crossed over in a number of occasions. So, but if you don't feel your question has been answered specifically, then yeah, do just drop it back in the chat box again, just in case we've missed it. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen. And so the first one comes around, I guess, the link between development and talent and performance. So do you have any ideas for helping clubs which are focused about developing players to high national and international levels, which can help fill the gap between today's top players like Paul and Liam, who will take their places in the next 5 to 10 years? So I'm going to hand over to Jenny for that one.
Cool, thanks, Greg. So from a development point of view, we see this as the programs we have in place. For example, Teacher Kids is a program we'll use to bring more kind of players into the sport. We believe that having kind of a wider base, starting from kind of the youngest age group growing up, will also kind of bring more potential talent into the pool. Also, with the focus with our new kind of junior sided team, focus on that junior participation pathway, and we'll be focused on those kind of key drop-off points and being able to focus our clubs as well, to be able to provide that really positive experience to keep more people in the sport. As kind of alluded to in the presentation around Teacher Kids Awards, the idea of the awards team is that each stage will get harder, introduce more skills in, more competition, so that the individuals going through those stages can develop their skills, and if they want to, then they hopefully then at the top stage 5 level will be able to then match their skills up to the performance bronze level and see where they measure up. So there's always that kind of drive there for that growth. There will be a webinar in, as Greg said, in January from the kind of coaching team, where there'll be some conversations around supporting those coaches to be able to kind of to develop themselves as well, and also linking up the performance side, supporting those coaches be able to develop their coaching as well to support those athletes.
Cool. Thank you, Jenny. And a question here around is there a basic leadership course available to allow experienced players to organise junior sessions without becoming a fully qualified coach? And would this include safeguarding training and clearance? So as we mentioned, there is going to be a coaching webinar in January, which will probably pick this work up in more detail. But I guess in short, the answer is if you're leading a session for young people, then there's always an expectation that you are a licensed coach with appropriate safeguarding and DBS training in place, because that's just to make sure that this session is as safe and as possible for young people. However, we are working up an activators award, and also how that can engage young people as well, to provide that, I guess, level of support just underneath for a fully qualified coach. So for someone that isn't necessarily got the motivation to become a qualified coach, but wants to support a junior session or an adult session, the Activators Award should hopefully provide that first step, I guess, on the road to doing that. So that is under development, and I know Craig, Brian, and Alad's coach and education manager are working on that. So the next question, it came from a couple of people actually with a slightly different slant on it, but one question was saying how can a county best support clubs and leagues within the new Table Tennis England development organisation? And there was another very similar question for asking the same thing about regions. So I'm going to hand over to Claire for this one.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to mention here, and I think first of all, really positive to hear that counties and regions are keen to support their clubs and leagues. The more support for clubs and leagues there is, obviously the better. I think it's about in terms of making sure that you're aware of what the needs are of the clubs and leagues within your particular area, be that county or region, and providing that support appropriately, whether it's linking in with local partners or perhaps getting in touch with us to put on a coaching course or something like that. Also, of course, we've gone through various programmes, various projects that we run for clubs and leagues, and it would be great if counties and regions can help share those messages with their clubs and leagues as well. And of course, if I think what I would say as well is if you're a county or a region and the clubs and leagues that you work with are particularly interested in running a development session or something online, we'd welcome that conversation, and that's something that we'd be happy to support with and help you with as well.
Thank you, Claire. So the next question was around kind of leagues specifically and funding support for leagues in the response and kind of to COVID and getting back up and running again. So yes, there is some funding available for leagues. So the latest kind of COVID activation fund that was released pre-lockdown, I think we released it on the Friday, and then Boris decided to make a statement about the lockdown on Saturday, which was not particularly great timing, but shows that we had no idea that was coming, at least. We have paused that for the time being, just to try and let the kind of dust settle, I guess, and allow clubs and leagues to think about their response, because obviously they weren't going to be able to put anything in place over this time in the next 3 or 4 weeks. But we are going to open that as soon as we get an indication that, the sport's that definitely going to be back from the 3rd of December, which we anticipate it still will be kind of moving back into the tiered system. So there is funding available for leagues as part of that. So absolutely get those applications in, and let us know how we can support you to get back up and running again. So next question was from Brandon Club up in the northeast, and is around a kind of proposed building opportunity, facility opportunity, and the question is, what support is available from Table Tennis England to help us obtain the grant funding necessary to build a dedicated table tennis club? So I'm going to hand this one over to Claire.
Yeah, so whilst I'm sure most of you will be aware, there's not any funding directly from Table Tennis England to help support that kind of project. We can support in terms of offering advice and guidance, be that on sort of specifications of buildings and opportunities, as well as also direction to possible sources of funding. We can help in terms of providing data and insight to support your application. We're more than happy to read over your applications and offer sort of a critical eye over those, and also of course happy to provide letters of support on to support any applications that you're putting in. If we can potentially also attend sort of planning meetings if it's at that stage and they're virtual, where possible, we would try and support those conversations with local authorities and other potential funding partners too.
Thanks, Claire. So the next question is kind of around kind of that club to school link a little bit. So our sport needs to attract many more junior players to the game. What examples of good practice exist within our Premier clubs for establishing and maintaining links with schools? So there are lots of them, I guess, is a short answer. And it's difficult to go into specifics around what those examples are this evening. But what kind of Claire alluded to earlier around some of the club webinars that we'll be running in the future and conferences, we're keen to start sharing more stories and good practice from club to club and increase that connectivity with clubs, so you can start to support each other more and start to learn kind of best practice from each other. However, we are doing some work around the school club link element too. So the TT Kids for Schools work, one advantage of us having the program and that to sell into schools, so when they buy their kit bags, is we know exactly what schools bought table tennis kit and have their contact details, and they're accessing our TT Kids training online and all the resources. So we have that instant link into those schools. So we will be, as that program grows, we will clearly be making sure that we link those schools into Premier clubs, particularly to make sure that crossover is happening between school-based participation and club-based participation. And the schools membership, that direct schools membership, will be the first time we've ever had that too. So that will again provide that better link for us to know which schools are playing table tennis and how many tables they've got, how active they are, and help to provide that school to club link. So that kind of brings us to the questions that were sent in. So I'm going to pick up the questions in the chat. So do keep sending any in that you have that haven't quite been answered yet. So there's a nice simple question for you, Jenny, around next round of TT Kids from Gordon. Has had success in the previous round. So yeah, when's the next round hoping to open up?
Yes, so we're hoping to open up phase 3, either going out this week or next week for sign-ups. We do realise it's a tricky period kind of to plan, and each week at the minute is different. There's always something to react to. So we are kind of opening those sign-ups to have those conversations and be able to work with clubs on a kind of a one-to-one basis, taking each situation individually. The plan would be that phase 3 would start in February, and we're putting things in place now that Colette, who is leading the programme, is working on. So for example, say, we obviously don't know if this happened, but say for example in a tier system, we'll be able to support those clubs to still have a delivery, something in place, potentially online or virtually, if we do go into a kind of a similar kind of tiered lockdown again. So yes, the sign-ups will be either this week or next week for TT's phase 3.
Cool, thank you, Jenny. And a question which I think was answered in the chat box, but perhaps Claire, a really quick kind of summary would be good too. Basic criteria for, what is the basic criteria for Premier clubs?
Yeah, of course. So for Premier clubs, you need a constitution to agree to Table Tennis England's safeguarding and equality policy, and also need to have a licensed coach, as well as give the details of some of your key committee members, and that's your chair, secretary, treasurer, welfare officer. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And there is another one for you, Claire. So is support available for non-affiliated and non-Premier clubs?
Limited. There is support available, particularly on the website. There's quite a lot of resources on there. All the recordings to the webinars that we've all mentioned, they're all available on the website to anyone who would like to watch them. Sport England Club Matters also have a great online resource that is available to everyone. So that's something that non-affiliated clubs can look at too. I think what I would say as well is that we've tried to reduce and remove the barriers for clubs to affiliate directly as either an associate club or a Premier club, depending on, as Greg mentioned earlier, looking at what ambitions are of clubs and trying to support as appropriate. So particularly the associate club, the requirements for that are to have a constitution and to agree to Table Tennis England safeguarding and equality policy, and that is all we ask for that membership. That means we have the right contacts, we can reach out to people. So yeah, there is a limited amount of support available for non-affiliated clubs, but I would encourage clubs to affiliate directly where they can.
Cool, thank you, Claire. And there's a question from Mark. Does the school scheme link to clubs? I probably covered that one, Claire, unless you've got anything else to add.
I think the only thing I would add is the school's membership. We ask whether those schools have, when they sign up, we ask whether they have a link with a club, and also whether that's something they're interested in. And so although, yeah, so again, we are looking to link those two things up and match up schools and clubs that are looking to work together.
Thank you. So there's a question from Sultan. So why did Table Tennis England feel the need to restructure the department? What I'm particularly interested in is whether the flaws of previous programs or reasons of the failures were identified. Was the new program built on learning from those lessons? Ultimately, it wasn't the reorganization of the team wasn't led by oh, this has gone really badly, or you know, what's happening. I guess you would expect us to say that, but it was more born out of a conversation around how do we better support clubs and adapt to the changing landscape of sport and leisure sector, as we kind of touched on at the beginning, really, in terms of there's a lot more competition for space in terms of the sport sport and generally kind of leisure and recreation sector. We need to make sure we stand out from the crowd, and the participation programs and building that participation team allowed us to place a greater focus on the development and ongoing expansion of those programs, like back to TT and bringing people back to the sport. We all know there's loads of people that come back to the club at 40, 50 and re-engage in the sport after they've perhaps had kids, or their career, they've settled in a certain place and feel able to pick table tennis up again. And as well as TT kids, what we don't want to do with these programs is to put them in place, go, oh, they're great, they're doing okay, and then not do anything with them for the next 3 or 4 years. I think often that can become easy to do, and we want to make sure we continue to adapt, develop, expand, grow those programs continuously, and that's what we continue and have had to do over the last 6 to 8 months, but we want to carry on doing so. But also I think the previous structure with a big team of regional staff, we had some unbelievable people in that team that provide fantastic support to clubs, but it also does create its challenges, and then having to know about every single thing that's going on across the organisation, and therefore being able to provide this more focused, dedicated kind of support and develop people with real expertise to help people in those areas, we think is a good way forward. So there are some learnings from that, in that we couldn't get out to every club. Clubs want to see a member of staff at their door. With 7 regional staff across 10 regions, it was impossible to meet that expectation. And we feel this way we can set better expectations. We know we can engage better with clubs online now as well. We still want to meet with clubs, but it allows us to place a greater focus also on development of programs and products. So yeah, hopefully that answers that one, Zoltan. Ultimately, we know not everything's gone well. I think Jenny touched on the local league work. We've had some success, but we probably haven't been able to influence the behaviour change in terms of looking at those formats as much as we would have wanted to, and that's why another reason we feel the time is right for a slight shift in momentum, I guess. There are other questions coming in, so I'm just going to scroll down. So with TT Kids for Schools, where is table tennis England expecting to get activators from? Teachers, activators from existing TT Kids sessions or others? Jenny?
Yeah, good question. So the TT Kids for Schools program does have a teachers course, and it does have resources that will allow kind of teachers to be able to deliver table tennis. The idea is that if it's a teacher who, for example, is a big table tennis fan, that's great. They can deliver it, but also the resources are that easy to pick up that hopefully someone who maybe isn't from a table tennis background will still want to deliver the program. But the program is flexible, so there's nothing stopping a school working with a local club, kind of as an exit route, working with a coach as that kind of activating deliverer, but also there's opportunities there for example, coaching companies such as Premier Education, who can do kind of breakfast clubs, that kind of wraparound care as well, and our school club as well. So it's quite flexible, and it'd be kind of up to kind of the school, or for example, if a club want to be involved, to work with them on that. So yeah, and the program is you can obviously see on the website, but also pick up with Collect potentially as well. But the program is slightly more flexible in its delivery. It's not as fixed as those 8 weeks as the club's one is, so it does allow kind of that flexibility for the program to be delivered in that school site. So a bit of a mix basically, and based on each situation for that question.
Thanks, Jenny. And then the TT Kids Award Scheme, which kind of Jenny's alluded to earlier, is a program that you don't have to be an existing TT Kids club to pick up. So the award scheme is something you can utilise without delivering the 8-week programs. For us, it's probably a really good follow-on to that 8-week programs. When people say, how are you going to keep them after the 8 weeks? The award scheme is probably the thing that we would hope clubs will use to do that beyond the 8 weeks. But yeah, other clubs can also utilise the TT Kids Award Scheme part of it too. Phil, you've put costs. Sorry, I wasn't sure. Can you just expand on that, and I'll come back to you. Okay, when will Premier clubs learn who their key table tennis England contact is? Claire?
Yeah, so club support officers have started to reach out to their Premier clubs, and yes, you should hear, if you haven't heard from someone already, you will hear from them over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so a question from Rory. If you run numerous school clubs with kids who only play once a week in school, should you set these schools up on Sports 80?
Yeah, so I guess the benefit of registering a school on Sport 80 is that it will help in terms of if the contact that you're giving is for the school, because the person in the schools will then receive the information about schools offers. So a bit like where we send the club's newsletters out, which has all the information relevant to clubs, if you sign a school up, they will receive that information that's relevant to the school, if that makes sense. So it's a different kind of a different kind of membership. So technically, no, you don't have to sign them up. But if you do sign them up, they will then receive the information that might help them further embed table tennis within their school and therefore support the work that you're doing as a club in that school.
Okay, so I've set up one. My kind of main, where my main sessions from, I put them on there, but I just use myself as the contact. So it's not really for me to do that. It's more for the content of the school to do it then.
Yes, though I guess what that will do with you signing up yourself is it means that you will also be aware of the school's offers, and you could then take them to the schools that you have a relationship with as well. But it was designed initially, yeah, for the schools to sign up themselves.
Just another follow-up question on that. So kids that are just playing after school club once a week, should they be affiliating to Table Tennis England as what's the new club play? Is it
club play? Yeah, I think to encourage them to sign up to the club play option, yeah, would be really good. It allows us to obviously to communicate with those people. Kind of, yes, they'll receive more information about table tennis opportunities in competition, or sometimes we run competitions to become mascots for nationals and different events. So yeah, club play would be the one for them.
okay?
Cool. And then Jim's asked about the annual affiliation cost for a non-Premier club. Claire?
Yeah, so the associate club membership is free and the Premier club membership is £65 a year.
So I guess Jim, the 3 different kind of categories that you probably referred to is Premier Club, which is £65, Associate Club is free, and then there's of course lots of clubs that play in leagues that don't affiliate directly to Table Tennis England. So those are the ones that probably Claire referred to in terms of there's limited support, but they can access all the resources online.
So is it you still get the support then if you're affiliated associate?
So the support varies between associate clubs and Premier clubs, but some of the things are the same that you would get as an associate club and a Premier club. Is you'll receive all the club communications, so clubs newsletters. You'd receive direct sort of information about conferences and invitations to those kind of engagement events, things like the national conference, for example. You also get your insurance, club insurance. And then, so some of the participation programs that Jenny spoke about are free for Premier clubs, but there's a small fee, but associate clubs can access them. I think it's £10 for the marketing materials for some of them, but so there is a level of support there, yes, for associate clubs. You'll get all the information in terms of what's going on, but there are of course enhanced benefits for the Premier clubs as well.
You did state earlier that the support was very limited, and you're just stated that it's just information, in fact, for an associate.
And that's what the associate membership was designed for, really. It was, to keep clubs that might be interested in opportunities that come up in the loop with things that are going on, and then if that is of interest and if that is something that club wish to pursue and wish to follow up on, they know about it and they've got the opportunity to then get involved with that.
So it does seem a no-brainer then that all clubs should be associated.
We have tried to make it as simple. We have tried to make it as simple as possible for clubs to do that. Absolutely.
Okay, so question here from Dave. Clubs with table tennis experience and coaches still had to attend a 3-hour face-to-face course to deliver TT Kids. Do teachers have to do the same 3-hour face-to-face course? So the training for teachers is different, and I guess the rationale and reasoning for that is the whole purpose of the TT Kids program was, I guess, to change or to try and reinvent in some cases and adapt and the way in which as a sport we deliver table tennis and that experience for young people. And it was, I guess, much more about, it wasn't about how you can hold a bat and how to teach a forehand. It was about the fun, the engagement, the different types of activities, and the welcoming environment we wanted people to create. And I think we talked about in the early stages of TT Kids that in a way sometimes we haven't always, and this is as much, we take responsibility as anyone, that we haven't always adapted to deliver the sport. We still deliver it in the same way as we did perhaps 20, 30 years ago. And the training was about changing that mindset and working with coaches and clubs to change that mindset. And we absolutely know that there's some fantastic deliverers out there, but we felt that the face-to-face course in the first phase of TT Kids was what was required to make sure we got those first few programs really successful and working well. So the teachers course is an online course. They should have that experience of working with young people. They do it day to day. They do training throughout university to become a teacher, and therefore that engagement with young people is there, and they have that experience. So what they need is how to deliver table tennis and the types of games and stuff you can play, which we were able to do online. And also for primary school taking up TT Kids, we didn't want to put them off by having to attend a course when it's difficult to facilitate a course for 2 or 3 teachers. So to increase the number of schools taking up the offer, we did go for an online course. However, we are actively looking at how we train clubs up going forwards as well, and making sure we learn from that first phase, and whether that can be kind of an online option in the future as well. So we will continue to work through that as well. I think it was, oh, sorry, Phil, your clarification of your cost question. I think it was down to cost for the restructure. Agreed that technology with Zoom will fill certain gaps. So I'm still not 100% what you mean, but there was no, we kept the same number of staff in roles, so it wasn't a cost reason for making the changes from our side. We've saved no money by making the changes, and it's nothing about saving money on expenses or anything. It was very much about the things that kind of touched on. We did lose a member of staff who took voluntary redundancy, but we kind of refilling that post. It wasn't about cutting roles in the team to save money. But clarify again though, if that's not the interpretation that you mentioned. So I'm just scrolling down again. So there's a question from Zoltan. How is the Premier clubs having a Table Tennis England contact any different from the old regional coach program about 10 to 12 years ago? Claire, any thoughts on that, or happy to take it if not?
Yeah, only immediate thought, obviously difficult to draw direct comparisons, but is that there isn't the location focus. So regional coach implies that person was close by and within that region, whereas the club support officer and the contact that a Premier club would have may not necessarily be local in terms of being down the road from them, but they will be there to support and to bring together some groups of Premier clubs that have similar ambitions or similar themes, and that's where we're really looking to take advantage of Zoom and the platform and bring clubs together based on priorities and ambitions, really, rather than based on location.
Thank you, Claire. And there's a question for Phil. Have you had a good take up with TT Kids in London? Hand over to Jenny for that one. I guess the schools program is still very new, only launched in September, but Jenny?
Yeah, so Greg's right. The schools program is probably too new at the minute to be able to confirm exact schools in inner city London, but we did have some clubs more on the outskirts. There's no kind of inner city involved in it, but there were 3 clubs. So Edinburgh, Gordon's on the call, has run 2 phases, and one of those phases had 2 different sessions, was successful with. Greenhouse Centre ran a session as well, and also Cumberland ran a session. But it's something we will be working on going forward. How do we work in those areas, either through partners or kind of local communities, to get TT Kids into those more deprived areas?
Yeah, and the absolute focus for TT Kids, the main emphasis for us is still about the club program, and that's always was the intention. We started with clubs because that's what we wanted to build in terms of that network of TT Kids clubs that were able to engage those new participants. But we've now added these different elements to it, but the focus is still very much we want to work with clubs to develop those programs. So Zoltan's just clarified his previous question. What would be the exact role of the Premier Club contact?
Yeah, so the club support officers, so their roles will, as mentioned, they're the people who will be the individual contacts for Premier clubs. So as well as understanding sort of what the intentions are of, let's say intentions, sort of ambitions, and what the Premier clubs are working towards, that will be their role. We did have some feedback that sometimes clubs weren't sure who to contact about certain things, and it may be that, you know, the club support officer is perhaps not necessarily the person that can answer the question that you have, but the idea is that you will have someone that you know that you can go to that will be able to point you in the right direction. The club support officers will also be bringing together groups or smaller groups of Premier clubs as well. So they'll, as well as understanding the individual sort of needs of the clubs that they work with, they'll be bringing you together in groups to sort of help overcome some common challenges or share information that's of interest. We're also obviously a national team, so as well as sort of working with Premier clubs directly, those club support officers will also feed into the national club support offer more widely. So if we need to look at changes to the Premier club or the associate club benefits, and yeah, being able to, they'll feed into the wider club support in the future as well. So let's sort of link the local and the national. I think that, I hope that answers the question.
Cool, thanks, Claire. And the last one that's on there, unless there's some more come on, how do clubs find out which schools nearby are running TT Kids for Schools? Jenny?
So I believe there'll be, when we've kind of set, well, it's starting to be set up, is an interactive mapping tool. We'll be able to see those schools, but also those clubs that run the programme as well. But we are still, as Greg said, in the very early stages, and obviously COVID hasn't helped that. Schools are starting to really find their feet now. We are seeing kind of schools starting to take the offer up. But yeah, so that's so on the website, the TT Kids website, there's a school section there where all the information should be on.
Cool. And there's a question from Dave. Is there a long-term even vision to try and learn from clubs in Europe to build some of our clubs up to try and mirror their success? And it's not a massive, it's not a piece of work we've done a massive amount of work on as yet, but absolutely, Dave. And I think ITTF are starting to pick this up a little more as well. And again, outcome of COVID, they've started to run webinars where they're asking different countries in to come and share information about how their success in young people, or their success in engaging females into their sport. So ITTF have started that process, and absolutely the environment in abroad in Europe is very different to us. And in terms of that, I know the biggest question often raised is why don't we have as many full-time clubs as abroad, and I think that's always a challenging one. I think from my experience of kind of speaking to clubs out in Germany and France in particular, a lot of the time they get their sports halls and facilities free of charge as a club, and that's just the way a lot of the structures work in Europe, where facilities are given free, and that ultimately the £40 an hour we're paying for a facility is the £40 that they're paying for two coaches, full-time coaches instead. So I think that's, for me, is one of the biggest differences between this country and in Europe. Not the sole difference, clearly. So there's not to say there's nothing we can learn, because absolutely there is, around sponsorship and around building those local club communities. But we also have the Brighton Overton's clubs of this world and other clubs doing great work that we can learn from in this country as well. But yeah, ITTF are starting to do that, which a lot more, which is positive. We're presenting about TT Kids stuff in one of their webinars next week, and then they're sending more information kind of monthly about different webinars, learning from different countries. So yeah, hopefully that will happen more. And question from Kevin: what's the latest in getting schools to reopen facilities? And that continues, Kevin. And Department of Education and DCMS are in conversation. DCMS have assured us they're talking to Department of Education about encouraging schools to reopen and allow sport back. Hopefully the announcement of vaccines and so on is positive news and will give people more confidence going forwards. Ultimately, there's no short-term fix. Ultimately, it's a school's decision, and schools are getting regular cases of COVID, particularly in secondary schools. So you can understand the challenges for them also. But we'll continue to work with DCMS and understand what that means for sport. But the message is being heard and delivered, I guess, across all sports, because it's not just a problem for us, but for every sport indoor sport out there. And question, will clubs be able to go to a list to see if any schools in their area are running TT Kids? It's a good question, and whether we provide a public list or we'll just signpost directly after each one is a question we'll have to mull over and probably speak to schools about whether they're happy for that information to be shared. Cool. That looks like all of the questions, and so yeah, thank you ever so much for joining us this evening and for sending in those questions. You know, we really enjoy these opportunities to talk to you and want to continue this open engagement and continue these conversations. So do pick up the phone to any one of us if you've got any further questions or you want some information on any other kind of topics and areas, then yeah, feel free to speak to us. And we will share information on the coaching and officiating version of this session in the next few weeks, but that will be hopefully be January the 20th is the date to put in the diary for now. Thank you everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.